let me warn you, air conditioning. A centralized air conditioning system is absolutely lethal for transmission in summer. Now, no hotel is designed that I make, public areas into, divide them. So these are the challenges that are going to come, and we've been constantly looking at tackling them.
We talked about wartime, and you talked about watching Netflix. So one of the serials that I got hooked sometime back is a serial called Foda, and I don't know whether I'm increasing viewership by saying that. And I came back and we said Foda style of management. So I have now 10 teams. As I speak right now, the Black Panthers are ahead, followed by the Scorpions, and Preeti is in Garuda, if I'm not mistaken. So, and she wants to change the name for some reason. There's a bunch of lieutenant colonels and generals who are holding a war room, and it's like amazing. And this is the crucible that will test out our future leaders. And this is what is the most effective leadership development program that I have ever seen. What is happening now in real time. I know that this is in 3 sections, and the first section was about what you are doing. The second one was about the business transformation that this could be an opportunity for, and personal and business transformation. And the third one, and I'm going to jump to the third and come back to the second again at the end, was what's happening to employees at this point in time. But before that, Preeti, if we can do a very quick poll and find out what organizations are doing at this point in time. We talked about what you guys have done, but let us, because we have a lot of people who have logged in and they represent 300 plus organizations. So let us understand what your organizations have done, and we'll if we can just post a poll.
Yes.
And you have multiple options for this poll. You only have 10 seconds. You can select more than one option. So do you are planning to do it in future. Okay, so we have most people have had enough time to give their options. So if we can put on the screen what is the result coming to, and let us see what we are talking about. 61% is creating contingency plans for client deliverables, and only 30% have invested in systems and processes to track productivity. So therefore, let me pitch this point to our panelist right now. So Preeti, if you can bring back the screen with the panelist, and you take back your screen. So Patu, just 1 in 3 organization is tracking productivity, the way they will track productivity when you are in office. So I think both for Sumit, and let me first come to Sumit, because Sumit, your business is all about productivity, and I know that you would be tracking it very, very closely. How are you ensuring, or is it even a priority at this phase, that people are productive and business is efficient?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that a leader's job is to create the right environment of success, and if you can get doesn't matter whether it's wartime or whether it's BAU, if you can get your colleagues, your employees engaged and focused towards a common purpose, they will do what's needful, and you don't have to worry about productivity or efficiency. I don't care whether our colleagues at the moment have to manage work-life balance. If they're staying in a joint family, there is in-laws or outlaws you have to look after. You have your husband, wife, children who are not available to go to crash. So all this stuff. So the way I look at it is, if you want to get up 6 o'clock in the morning and do shift till 9 o'clock and then take some time out and then log back in about 2:30, 3 o'clock, I don't care. So for our perspective is empowerment of our colleagues this crisis is really important. I think this is one of the key ingredients. As long as you set the boundaries, and within the boundaries, you say, get your generals to say basically, these are the deliverables that need to be delivered. How you deliver it, we don't really care. So you find time within your busy schedule to get that delivery done. So that's our priority. And I think, I don't believe this will fix over 1 month or 2 months. If this was 1 month, you can focus on productivity, utilization, etc. But since this is going to be longer term, you almost need to tap into the goodwill of the organization, and you almost tap into the engagement and the culture of the organization that this is your test, whether the culture that you've created in the organization, does it stand the test of time? Does that stand the test of crisis? And if they're ready to handle that, then you've kind of cracked it.
Yeah, in fact, I'm reminded of a saying which I can modify, that culture takes over when your people are in lockdown. The CEO does not take over, culture takes over. And Patu, you talked about the fact that the same business is being done by, half the people or fewer people. That obviously means that productivity is high for the hotel, for that particular property. But for the entire organization, is this a time for you to focus on productivity or broad macro parameters, and it's time to focus on energizing people and inspiring them, and not so much on the nitty-gritty of productivity measures? What's your take?
See, already, as I mentioned, I'm finding that 40% of staffing is serving 65% of demand. So that's a learning, that's a lesson. And how we intend to capitalize on that is, once this gets over, especially after a vaccine and we go back to normal times, we are actually doing a manpower study even right now, looking at productivity in different hotels. And I reckon there will be a 20-25% saving, which is not by asking people to go, but because we are planning to anyway grow. Our current pipeline is another 25%. So actually, we don't need to add more staff technically. I think the bigger thing we have to do, and I guess every company is doing, is, you see, this is a time of utter fear. And the most important thing is, this is, it's like self-preservation, yeah. So since Sumit was talking about Sun Tzu, the two important things he talks about is patience and information. So I think you tried to tackle, Sumit, the information by limiting it because there's so much fake shit.
Yes.
But patience is important. And let me tell you, when fear comes, I find patience disappears. So I think the big message to give internally is, A, we will do whatever it takes when you are working in our hotels to ensure that you are not subject to infection. Which means if you have to order, we ordered, I don't know how many PPEs. Because we were serving quarantine guests. The government had asked us to do that. We ordered personal protective equipment. We started, this thermal screening before the 15th of March. We were insisting on sanitizing, hand washing, social distancing. Actually, the corporate office shut down and everybody moved to their homes before the lockdown. So what is the point I'm making? The point I'm making is, one is, employees must be protected at the workplace because it is our foremost duty. I feel really sad that we can't do the same for them where they are all over India, because we have a lot of entry-level employees who've gone back to their towns and villages. How you do is you try and keep in touch with them. You say, listen, this too will pass. Stay safe, stay healthy. So this is not a time to talk about, frankly, productivity is for those who are in my hotels. The others is just safety. And concern is the kind of impact it will have on your mental health. Being cooped up at home, in congested places, maybe not have access to, maybe there may be even community transmission. We really don't know what's going on. Actually, we don't know what's happening in India. That's my biggest concern, right? So to the extent we can, we give the messaging that we are there for you, but it is a time where it's not really, for me, the business side is okay, just survive somehow. The bigger issue for me is that what's happening with these 6,000 guys who are out there, all over the place, in circumstances like this, who won't have access to the kind of things we think they do. And frankly, I don't have an answer for it. I really don't know if any colleague of mine has got infected today, who's maybe in Himachal. And so I don't look at productivity to
That's
answer.
right.
I'm amazed at the way they are doing in my hotels, which I cannot visit. And I'm waiting for the lockdown to end, because when they come back, as they must, I have to now work out how to ensure whoever comes back stays in a hotel in quarantine, then is available to serve our guests if there are any guests. I don't even know that. So right now it's complete lack of knowledge, let me tell you. Complete lack of knowledge. And at least I know 2,000 are okay. And we've not had any, we've done so much work in the hotels that 2,000 guys, safe, fine. Maybe another 2,000 who are in touch with us, but a lot of them aren't. And I don't know what's happening.
The thought struck me about a week back, and a lot of my people are very young people, and they're still staying with parents. And we have been doing crazy things like yoga in the morning and Zumba in the evening, or, a Tambola night and stuff like that. And the thought struck me that each one of them is using their parents' home. And in many cases, if they're married, their family home as my office. Did I take somebody's permission before saying that I'm going to use your home as my office? And I just, on the spur of the moment, created a small video and sent it to all my people, and a video for their parents and for their families to saying that, thank you so much for allowing us to use your home. We know how much of discomfort and that you are facing. People are fighting over bandwidth, and by now you know that your loved one really works very, very hard. And I must tell you that thanks to his contribution and her contribution, we are financially in a strong position. And thank you for your support. And I suddenly realized that offices as a homes are not designed to be office. Absence of regular support structure, absence of having support staff, they're testing relationships and the power equations between husband, wife, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. All of those are being really, really tested. The families of all my people today know whether they are working in a great place to work or not. It can't be hidden, from the family members anymore. So on the subject of managing physical and mental health of your people, so Sumit, and since you are also Dr. Sumit Mitra, so I'll start with you. So what's been your reading of what's happening with with family members, many of them women employees who were out for 8 hours, 10 hours, and their family members really didn't know how hard they worked?
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamics. I think some of the trends that we are seeing is some families have been very supportive and understanding. Some families hasn't been, because, for example, I'll give you an example. We have high volume, but the husband or the wife or another family member may be in a business where the volume has really gone down. So they are unable to comprehend why my wife or my husband is working 12-hour days. So why can't you go and fry some pakoras for me? We are all at home. Why can't you entertain the children? And those sort of social issues we are seeing coming through. I think from an India perspective, the biggest issue is the space where you work. And generally what we are finding is a lot of our colleagues would find the quietest corner of the apartment or wherever it might be to get their laptop working. Now, that quietest corner may be just 4 walls or 3 walls in a corner, and you're looking into a wall for 8-9 hours. And that is not good for you. Some apartments, they have even stopped people to go to the common areas. So they are stuck in that apartment for last God knows how many weeks. So their mental wellness and well-being is really important. And the way to know it is you got to have a bunch of first-line managers who are talking to them on a regular basis, is to have that connect with their employees to understand what the hell is going on. Can you take a photograph of their working environment? You know, you can write as many processes, principles, guidance, etc. We are pushing that through every day. We are having wellness sessions every morning, yoga, etc. You know, every organization is doing that. But what's important is, I really like your point. I mean, on March the 15th, I sent a 3-minute video to all the parents and all the families to thank them, to say, we have a Parents as Partners program where every year all our Exceed performers get a personal letter from me to thank them for their support, etc., etc. But I almost extended this to say, now you're supporting them at home as they work. So really appreciate. I got almost 600 emails and letters back from the parents to say, and some of them even recorded a video for me to say, thank you, you know, at least you're thinking about us. So you see some of those dynamics. Can you solve everything? As I said before, you can't. You can't fix everybody's social issues, economic issues. But what you can do as an employer is do whatever you can. We are helping towards their electricity bill, because as you know, your electric bill will go up as you kind of sitting and using the fan or electric, etc. You're paying their broadband bill or any dongles that they need. You're almost not charging them for any other things that is naturally deducted from their salary. So all those every little helps, as we say. But most importantly, psychologically, as a doctor, you know, many years ago, how I feel is you got to treat people how they want to be treated. Because what's happening here is you sometimes paint people with a broad brush and say, but it happens in my family, why can't it happen at yours? Everybody is unique and everybody's situation is unique. And we got to treat people how they want to be treated. Some people are quiet. They don't want to talk about their family. They're probably embarrassed about talking about work, sitting on the floor and working. Let them be. If that's what they're comfortable with, we need to support them and we need to do anything and everything we can to support them. If they don't want help, that's okay. But we got to treat individuals as individuals. I think that's what I find works for us, is you got to treat individuals how they want to be treated rather than how you want them to treat.
And we'll take some questions now, because I'm sure there will be a lot of questions around stress and anxiety. Patu, you mentioned about fear. And I think the amazing thing about your organization is I know of no other hospitality company which is saying that we are protecting jobs, and the top management has taken a pay cut to the extent of the pay cut that you mentioned. And I know that this month end, there would be many hospitality companies, many retail companies, you know, leaving aside the food retail, where you will hear big news of layoff. So from your perspective, Patu, why is it so important for you to protect those jobs and keep those people? Surely, retaining talent is not necessarily the biggest priority right now, because you have more people than you need. So what makes you so employee focused?
I think you know, Prasenjit, that our business is all about employees actually, and the rest is all motor, brake and whatnot. So we've always been employee focused. We were 4th best workplace in India the last time we participated. I think it's a sense of, well, remember I started this company when I was a professional, right? So I know, and I think I shared with you once that I used to sometimes wake up in the morning when I was working and say, I don't want to go to work, but I was tyrannized in the sense that you have salary, you got to, you know, you have to go to work. There is no sense of wanting to go to work on some days. So with that background, I think I recognize that the biggest fear a person can have is loss of income, especially in a country like ours, and especially at a time like this, because there is no alternative. If you don't have a job today, you're not going to get a job, let's face it, for the next maybe year or two, because the economy is quasi-shattered. There's not going to be availability of opportunity. Number two is you may not be able to even reach that company which may have jobs. So to take away livelihood today is, to me, an utter crime, personally. And I think, sure, some companies may have to do it. I'm not holding them, judging them. But to me, it is the absolutely last thing you should do. Everything else is acceptable. The absolute last thing you do today is to lay off people, because they are totally helpless. So if you don't have a sense of loyalty to them, nobody will have a sense of loyalty. So today actually will determine whether your employees are engaged. We can say anything we like. See, keep in mind, my colleagues, when they go back home, they can't work remotely. Our business is not remote. I mean, we have a call center with maybe 100 people, but there are no calls. Okay, so it is once they go home, they're home and they may want to come back. They may want to work. They can't come back. They can't work. They come, and any employee who comes back in these conditions, where he or she could be infected, and takes that leap of faith to come back to you, don't you have to take a leap of faith? It's not that they're not coming because they don't want to. Yeah, sure. I'll also tell you, there was a joke in my executive committee that we'll be paying salaries for 7,000 guys, and maybe when we reopen all our hotels, because half our hotels are open, out of the 7,000, 2,000 won't come back. It's okay. What's the big deal? If you can afford it, we can touch wood afford it, then why the hell do you have to save money in this, is my broader question.
Well, yes, in a sense, when we had that debate, in our own company for 13 years, we have run it at 33% profit before tax, etc. And the simple thing was that for 13 years, your people have given you shareholder returns. And it is now the time of the shareholder to show some gratitude for people who have given the kind of returns that they have given. And I think that's what leadership is all about. And Preeti, are there questions for the panel?
Yeah, I think one, of course, a couple of them you all preempted. So there was a barrage of questions, Patu, for you. But I think as you were talking, we kind of addressed 2-3 of them already. One, which is for you again, Patu, which says that how would you address and manage your employees' fears of getting infected from guests when the lockdown ends? So I think you partly kind of answered it. But I think that's one.
I'll answer that, because that is a very real fear, by the way. See, this is an environment where technically anybody can infect you when you step out of an isolated environment.
Right.
For example, somebody could have got it yesterday. You won't know. I could have got it yesterday, and I meet you, and there is viral emission, and you get it. So there is nothing. Frankly, there is no guarantee. All you can do is maximize precautions. So we were talking about opening our corporate office, right? On Monday. We have seating for, I think we have 50, 70 cabins, and we have open seating for 200 people. So we were discussing, everybody must sit 10 feet away. Air conditioning must be shut. We are now reviewing how we can put ultraviolet filters for our air system to clean it. Everybody must wear masks. There must be a sanitizer. There must be an executive housekeeper whose only job, who's normally running a hotel, whose only job is ensuring with 5 or 10 people constant non-stop sanitization with sodium hypochlorite. X, Y, Z. So these are processes you set in place when you open. We do the same with our hotels. So to answer your question, there is no safety once you step out of your house. Okay, whether you're meeting a colleague, whether you're just touching some surface. So all you can do is maximize precautions, and there are enough SOPs available. And if any of them want, you can forward them my email, and I will send them the SOP, how to keep an office clean, because that's our main job. No? We are 1/3 of our staff are housekeeping.
Right, thank you so much.
So that's the key. you don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
who you can get it from, just take precautions.
One more which has come from many people, and I think that's for the entire panel, is to say that it is a reality for many organizations that they have to, or they may have to, lay off staff or cut salaries. In a situation like that, how do you keep the motivation high for your employees, or how do you sort of balance that? So I
So may
guess
I answer
both
that
of you
first?
could- Yes,
So
please.
in the global financial crisis of 2008-9, so we have history. We have no external source of capital. We are internally funded. And so in 2009, we came to a point where our revenue had come down 50%.
Hmm.
Okay, not as bad as this one, but very bad nonetheless. So I again called a meeting of our top team and I said, guys, half of you go or quarter of you go and leave without pay. We'll work that out. Or, we all share the burden. Same thing.
Hmm.
But it was not so bad. So what I told them was, I will take 100% salary cut. Every one of you take 50%. And the
Sure.
junior executive, this was not the associates, these were managers, will take 20%. So we had a 3-4 step thing. I take 100, you take 50, next person, next level takes 30, and last level takes 10. And we reached an amount where again we broke even. And
Sure.
all I said was, because this was not like COVID, I said, when things improve, we will return this money to you. So it is a loan you are making to the company, and we'll pay you 12%, which was much higher than what you would get. And I
Sure.
remember 2 years later, we paid about 30 crores, 25 crores, whatever. We were a small company there with that 12%. And everybody said, wow, what a wonderful, saving program this was. Okay.
Hmm.
But it worked for us. So you have to, even staff, you're saying you want to lay off. Here's a suggestion. I know the law says do a lockout and, after 15 days, you don't have to pay anybody. I think if it is so bad, then ask them, and you'll be amazed how supportive staff are. They can see conditions. Ask them that, can I do the following? I'll pay you 50% salary and you work 50% of the time and I'll rotate all of you, whatever. All I'm saying is, I like what Prasenjit said, yeah, that for 13 years you've been giving the shareholders profit. 1 year the shareholders can't say, we will pay you back, forget profit. I know we're going to lose money. It's okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think, frankly, unless it's absolutely calamitous, this is the last
ways.
option, in my opinion.
I think for me, I would say, over the last 2 years, we have probably delivered significant amount of efficiency. I think net, we reduced our headcount by 22% over the last couple of years, but we have never made any redundancy. So what we've said is we will naturally, attrition that happens, you just don't backfill on those. And secondly, we've done a lot of automation. Nowadays there's AI, ML, there is, RPA capability that you bring in. So as we free up those colleagues who were doing those work, we reskill them, retrain them to take on more value-added activity, to become a business partner to the wider Tesco group. So that's what we've been focusing on, so that from a career perspective, so we have less people, but they do more and more value-added activity. So that's and that's a better story to tell rather than making a redundancy.
Right.
I hope by now the participants of this webinar are clear why Sumit's company is a great place to work, and this is not just this current company. I remember the story of transformation, Sumit, in your previous company, which is such a global giant, which came into the certified great place to work, and why Lemon Tree is one of the best workplaces. And I think a lot is about the leadership. And in a small way, we are a very small company at Great Place to Work. We talked about 13 years of profit-making history. Last year was one of our best years. And what we decided is that our profits are normally broken into different parts, one for employees, one for owners, and then for reserves. The entire employee share, we increased it so that every colleague of ours got between 5 to 6 months on an average salary. And we said, keep it in your bank. Just keep it in your bank. Don't spend it. We are pretty confident we'll go through this process together. But who knows, as Patu said, you can't predict that all the answers. So we have done a good job last year. Keep this money with you. And when the time came for the owners, and I'm so proud of my my fellow owners, they came back to me and they said, sorry, our portion of the profit, we want to keep it in the company just in case, because we are going through bad times. And I think this is what probably leadership is all about. Preeti, any
Yes.
other question before we proceed?
Yeah, I think
And
one which is come from quite a few people, and I think some have said asked Sumit and some have said asked Patu. It is essentially to say that whenever the lockdown is over, and especially for when thousands of people will come back to work, are there any suggestions? I think we've covered it partly, but it is very specific to saying that as they come back, one, of course, giving that comfort that yes, you are safe when you come back, but are there any 2-3 tips that you have?
I'll start with that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think we are rushing into this. I think it's a sprint as well as a marathon. So we need to, people thinking it's a sprint, we'll go through this, we'll burn all our energy, we'll focus on this, and it'll be all over in month and a half, 2 months lockdown. I think this impact will be probably 18 months, 12 to 18 months. So I am certainly not rushing to get our colleagues into office straight away. I think there are a number of measures that we need to put in place in our campus. Once the lockdown is slightly released, so we will have our architects looking at social distancing. Perhaps we got to look at a different mode in our cafeteria, because generally in cafeteria you got 700-800 people eating together. So I think there are different things we need to think about from an infrastructure perspective, how we sanitize our cabs as they bring colleagues into our office, and how do we do checks on our drivers who are actually bringing those. So there are a number of processes we need to have in place. And perhaps there is another norm which would emerge out of this is there are some colleagues maybe cut out to work from home. They have the right infrastructure. They have the right, we can also support them to put table, chairs, broadband, etc. So I think we've got to take this slow, because nothing worse than rushing this and then to find out that there is a COVID 2.0 coming around October, November time, and then it all relapses again, and all this quarantine that we've had and lockdown is completely wasted. So we need to take our time, and as a corporate, we feel that we have a responsibility towards our colleagues as well as to the society, not to rush this just for revenue sake.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Very well said. I'm going to add one dimension to this, and this again, I'll start with Patu, that this is only the plan A. Plan A is business continuity. What do you do? Contingencies and so on and so forth. What is the plan B? And plan B is, how do you use this crisis as an opportunity to transform your business, and in maybe 1 to 2 years time frame, how is your business going to look differently? Is everyone in crisis mode tackling today's situation, or do you actually have bandwidth or a team working on the long-term transformation and using this current situation as the opportunity for that? Patu?
So you asked me first because I'm older than Sumit. Is it age technology or?
Okay, I say I have so many comments here which are saying admiration for both the leaders. Patu is awesome. Sumit, thank you, and stuff like that. So I'll send you a snapshot once we finish.
Thank you.
So I think, Prasenjit, I don't have team A and team B, frankly. While it's a crisis, there are a lot of learnings happening. By the way, I totally agree with Sumit. This is going to be a 2-year journey. And a lot of, the question is, for example, to answer plan B, you asked me, what will you do once you survive? So our thought process was very simple. Survive, and then, I'm trying to be poetic, thrive. Okay. So the thing is, to survive, we need a certain amount of cash in the worst case scenario, which is what we wanted to be sure of. So that's survival, which means, everything goes to hell. 2 years, we should have enough cash to be a going concern after 2 years without laying off anybody. That was the only 2 things. Now, the second plan is the same team. because we do discuss, is my theory is that there are going to be two fundamentals. One is short-term impact, one is long-term impact. So short-term impact is that there will be total demand destruction in the tourism space and maybe civil aviation space. And even if you sort for it and account for it, for example, any aircraft that flies now will have to ensure a certain distance between two passengers. And what are the economics of that going to be? You'll have to double your ticket rate or whatever it is, right? So what is the new norm going to be in social distancing, in customer, that is guest concern about hygiene, safety, security? You asked me earlier, Preeti, what about an employee's fear from, getting infected by a guest who's actually just been thermal checked? What about the reverse? So we have to, basically look at the entire stakeholder community and look at how we are going to reassure all of them that we've taken the maximum possible precautions. That's one. The second is, my theory is that social behavior will change. So will there be, like I just heard Sumit say, some people can work from home, therefore demand for office space to that extent from his company will reduce. Then social distancing will actually require people to sit more far apart. So rentals per person, per seat, either will go up or all these guys will renegotiate it down and change the economics of the office rental business. What will happen in hotels? Well, I think we'll have to completely review our B2C interaction, which means how I interact with my guest. Okay, that's going to be a big game changer. Last, I think this massive demand destruction in the B2C space, especially tourism, is going to lead to massive supply destruction from undercapitalized / insolvent players in the next 1 year. So to answer your question, I don't want to sound like a vulture or a carpetbagger, but I suspect that there will be supply acquisition opportunities in the next 1 year. So while I must tell you honestly, I'm not looking at it avariciously, I expect they will come up. And I'm kind of, let me put it this way, lazily scanning the horizon.
When you say lazily scanning, I can just about imagine that brain of yours going about
It's far too lazy. Than regular.
at an amazing speed. And I know there are a lot of questions, but I'm conscious of time, but I can't resist asking one last question. This is personal. And I know both of you for a very long time, and the decision that you take or you took and the leadership that you display has long back gone beyond top line, bottom line. So Sumit, I don't know whether all our attendees actually got it, that Dr. Sumit Mitra is not a PhD in philosophy or management. He is a real, genuine doctor. He is a physician. And then he decided that instead of medicine, he actually decided to make, I don't know, Sumit, if I remember correctly, run a call center for National Health Service or something of that kind. So what?
National
Health
Service, yes.
So what happened to you? How did a very promising doctor and physician decided that I want to get into leadership? Tell us about your turning point in your life as a leader, and I'll ask the same question to Patu.
Yeah, I don't know about the promising doctor bit. Being from a Bengali family, the pressure was always have to be a doctor or an engineer. So I was almost brought up to be a doctor. So I studied medicine. I did pass my degree. And then I realized that my calling is elsewhere. I felt what I didn't realize, there was a lot of signals in my life is through leadership. So I was the chairman of my university co-council. I was captain of my cricket team in university, at school. I was the school captain. So there was a number of things which kind of when I look back and I realized these were sort of signals in my life, which kind of was telling me that I need to get into the leadership area rather than being in medicine. So when I decided to give up, and my parents thought I was either having a nervous breakdown or smoking something really funny, I decided to go into MBA because I didn't have any management background, etc., etc. And my calling was, my big thing about medicine was you give something back to the society. And I felt that I could do without being a doctor. I could give something back to the society by changing the culture of organizations, to changing the hierarchical structure within organizations, and to create a great place to work culture. Sounds like a cliche, but that's kind of what I wanted to do, and create jobs.
Yeah, I think we lost Sumit for a minute there. But since I know a little bit about the story, so let me complete the story. Sumit, are you back? We lost you for a minute there.
Yeah, I'm back.
Go ahead.
I felt the calling was more about creating jobs, giving a career path. So if there is one thing I want to be known as a leader, once I retire and hang my boots, is how many leaders have I created in the industry. So that's the way I want to be measured, and that's something giving back to the society. And how can India as a country and world PLC as a country become a great place to work? That's the way I look at it. That's my calling, and hence I took that decision.
And thank you for sharing that personal story, Sumit. Leadership is personal, and the only thing which is common between you and Patu across two very different industries and right now two different contexts is both of you also know how to make a lot of money, and there seems to be something there that a great manager who cares first for people actually inspires performance, which gives you sustained business results. So Patu, we have studied you for many, many years, even before people started talking about your diversity and inclusion story or opportunities that you give to opportunity deprived. Now, with your IIT, IIM, A.T. Kearney kind of a background, you are exactly the person I would expect to see in some big shot investment banker kind of a role. And was there something that was a turning point, or at least tell us one example or story of what inspired you to create an organization that gives so many opportunities to opportunity deprived people?
That's, in a word, serendipity, happy chance. So I was listening, my mother was a doctor in the army. She wanted me to be a doctor. My father was an engineer, wanted me to be an engineer. Classic gender struggle. I couldn't stand the sight of blood, so I became an engineer out of serendipity. Now, when I wanted, I reached male menopause in my mid-30s. It's called andropause, by the way, for those of you who didn't know it. And I said I want to retire by the time I'm 40. But I had two problems. A is I didn't have money, and B is I didn't know what I would do after retirement. So basically, I decided to build a hotel as an inflation hedge and make money enough to build that hotel. So I joined A.T. Kearney, which paid me a very high salary for doing very little work. And, then I had enough money to build a hotel. And once I built the hotel, I was lucky because a bunch of people who had worked with me professionally in my former life decided to take the leap and come on board. So when they came on board, they decided, again, serendipity, that, the hotel is doing well, let's build more hotels, let's make a chain. So basically, and I'm being very honest, I'm not speaking with tongue in cheek. I have often been doing things because, people close to me or working with me have said, let's do it. And in that sense, I've been like a leaf in a storm. Right now, I'm in the COVID storm. But it's all, I say, serendipity. I've had no grand strategy, nothing. Jo hua, so hua. So I'm going through life in a happy way. Let's put it this way.
Awesome.
And my dad and mother told me before they passed away, they were very uncomfortable. Both were very left of center, both my parents, okay? and they said, whatever you do, create employment, and money is not necessarily an ambition you should have, which I actually never did. And they were very clear that take care of people. So in that sense, I feel like a father to 8,000, honestly.
Thank you so much. And with your permission, Patu, and I know we'll wind up in probably 3
Yeah.
minutes since we have just reached our outer limit. Patu actually figured out that there are almost 50,000 orphans in the state of Delhi alone. And these are boys and girls who are brought up, and the government takes care of them till the age of 18. One day after 18 years of age, you are thrown out on the street. And you know what happens to boys and girls at that age when you are thrown out on the street with no preparation whatsoever. So he actually went to the government and created a scheme where a Lemon Tree now hopefully is part of a consortium where these people start earning money by doing training at the Lemon Tree Hotel, at the age of 17. And by the time they are 18, they actually have a bank account, they have money, they have necessary training for a full-time job in the organized sector. And I had no clue that 50,000 orphans, almost 50,000. Patu, is my memory correct? And am I narrating the right story?
Yeah, well, there are 50,000, but over the age of 3 to 18. So every age here, there are about 3,000.
Wonderful.
And they all become criminals or, sad things.
Absolutely. And what I really love about both Sumit and Patu is that it's not charity. They actually do it as a part of a overall transformation model that they have in the back of their mind. They know that it makes sense for the individual, for business, and for the community. This has been a amazing and incredible kind of discussion that we have had with both of you. Every time I learn so much, and we would seek feedback from all the people who have attended this webinar. If you have liked this and you want us to do more such webinars, then do write back to us, and we'll make sure that we come out leaders from different contexts who can share their strategies with you, which might be useful at this point in time. Over to you, Preeti. Thank you so much, and I hope we have been on track. Yeah.
No, I think huge thanks to both of you. And my screen is full. Like I said, I think people have liked the session. Of course, there's so much learning. I've had opportunity to interact a little more with Patu's organization than Sumit's, but I think both of you very inspiring, and more importantly, this is practical stuff, right? It's not coming from some book or some theory. It is something which you are dealing day to day with. So thank you so much for taking out this time, and we'll of course connect with you. And thank you so much for the people who join and for all your questions and interactions. And we will be sharing the recording and come back to you with the answers, with the questions we couldn't answer, right? And a lot of people have asked for Patu's mail since he kind of offered it. Sumit, you had people from BT also asking just for some advice on how to manage stress and stuff like that. So I guess a lot of sharing. Thank you so much.
Is it possible for the organizers to unmute everyone so that we can give a round of applause to both Sumit and Patu? If I don't know technically if you can unmute everyone who is there, yeah. And can you give a big round of applause to both of them, please? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye bye.